section in Chapter 10, which is all about segment lengths. So we're not talking about angles and arcs, but we're talking about segments within circles. So looking at what's up there, we have two chords that are completely inside of a circle. And what we're going to do is multiply each of the individual segments that are created. So if you look right here, AC is right here. We're going to multiply that times CE, which is the other part of that segment, and set that equal to BC times CD and solve. So one of those values is going to be X, the others are going to be numbers. You just get X by itself. We'll do some examples later, but let's learn the three formulas first. So that's the first one. Here is another option. So these two segments aren't completely inside the circle. They are partially outside. So when you have something that's outside the circle, we're going to take that outside piece and we're going to multiply it times the entire segment and then do the same thing on the other one and set them equal. So we'll take the outside piece times the entire segment and put an equal sign in between them. And the last rule is essentially the same as that rule right there, but it has a tangent line, so it ends up being a tiny bit different, but not really. It's the same thought process. So we still have a segment that's outside, and we'll multiply it by the whole thing. And then we'll do the same thing here, but there isn't an outside and an inside, so we just take that segment times itself, because there isn't anything to add to it. So we take Kn times Kn. So those are the three rules with segments. Those are the last three that we're going to learn for this chapter. So just to review before we try some of these, if the two segments are completely inside the circle, we create four separate segments. We just take AC times CE, whatever they are, and set it equal to BC times CD. If they're outside the circle in any way, we always take the outside chunk times the entire thing and set that equal to the outside chunk times the entire thing. Same thing on that last one. Questions at all? Okay, let's try some. Let's try these. So I'll wait till you get these pictures drawn. Yes. So these three examples, none of them are where the two segments are completely inside the circle, so they're the other form. So we're always going to take the outside section and multiply it by the whole segment and set them equal. So looking at this X right here, we'll take the outside segment and then multiply it by the whole thing, which is still the same thing. So we'll take X, we'll multiply it by X, and we'll set it equal to, on the other side, we'll take it the outside chunk times the whole thing, which is what? 4. So this is really X squared is equal to 4. So X is equal to what number? 2. Technically plus or minus 2, but we can't have a negative distance, so we're not going to count the negative 2 as one of our answers. Questions on that setup? All right, so looking at the next one, we've got a circle, we have a 5 and a 7 and an X just on the inside. So looking at this one, we've got 7 times 7, because we'll take the outside chunk times the whole thing. Set that equal to the outside, which is 5, and then what's the whole thing going to be written as? What did we do here? We added them, so what should we write right here? 5 plus x. No, 5 times x would be 5x. When we add them, they're separate. Okay, so looking at that, we've got 49 is equal to, what would we do here? There you go, 25 plus 5x. So we want to distribute that 5 to both of the terms. What do we do now? What do we get? So what do we get for our answer? 4.8. Questions yet? Okay, looking at the last one, on the top anyway. We're always going to take the outside times the whole thing, remember. Okay, biggest mistake is kids will take 18 times 22. Okay, remember that it's 18 times the entire segment. So if we set this up, we've got 18, and then we're going to multiply it by what? 18 plus 2. Which is? 40. Then we'll take the outside times the whole thing, which is 20 plus x. All right, so what's 18 times 40? You add the whole thing together. So we'll distribute that. We get 400 plus 20x. So we'll minus 400 from both sides. And divide by 20. How much? 60. 160. 16. Questions on the setup or anything else? Okay, last two. These are similar to each other because they both have the segments completely inside the circle. So remember, there's no adding involved on these. We just take the 9 times 16 and we set it equal to 18 times x. So what is 9 times 16? Divide by 18. Questions? Last one. What are we multiplying together? 3 and x and 4 and 6. So 3x equal to 24. X on this one also equals 8. So if they're completely inside the circle, you just take each segment, multiply them together. The only difference when it's outside the circle is that you have to add those segments together, the outside and the inside. Questions before the very last example? All right, the reason that I'm going to show you this next one is because it's worth 500 team points on the test. Okay, so it is optional, but I do still want you to follow along, ask questions, but it's using what we just learned today. Okay, and a lot of algebra. Anyone still need this?
I have a question?
Yes.
To get the 500 points, do we only need one in the row to get it, or all of us?
You could each get it and get more team points. Okay, so here we go. So looking at this picture, we want to set it up just like we learned earlier. So we need to multiply some things together. To figure it out. So let's start with this top. Looking here. What's going to be multiplied here? 3 times. Okay, what about the other side? The outside?
X plus 1 plus X minus 1.
Questions yet? So it's always the outside, and then you multiply it by the 2 things added together. All right, so let's start simplifying. We've got a 3 here, and then what's in here?
9. 3.
Just right here.
5 plus X.
Okay, this is X plus 1. What's here? 2X. All right, what about this side?
2X. It will be 2X plus 2X. Sure. Plus 2X.
Remember that 2x times x is 2x squared, not 3x. You're multiplying those. All right, so we're going to move both of these things over to the other side. So we're going to subtract the 3x on both sides and subtract the 15 on both sides. So we really have minus x, correct? Putting these together. Then we'll subtract 15. Now, last year, all of you, at some point, whether you remember or not, had a unit on factoring. You had quadratic functions like this, equations, and you learned how to do it using either the quadratic formula, the negative b plus or minus the square root b squared minus 4ac over 2a. Does that sound familiar? Seeing that? Okay, do you remember seeing that at least? Okay, that would give you the answers. Or we also learned how to do this using factoring. Anyone remember using this x? Anyone have Miss Medvick?
Yeah.
Do you remember using the x?
Yeah. Oh, yeah, the triangle. I mean, not the triangle.
And then you do the window.
Okay, you lost me totally.
So here's the deal. This, to me, using this method, and if you've never seen it before, that's fine. You will learn it in Algebra 2. This, to me, is easier, but you can use this to find your 2 answers. Okay, this is team points. It's not required. So I'm going to show you both ways really quickly. And then we're going to just, if you get it, you get it. If you don't, you can ask questions, or you can just say, I don't get it. Okay, so where am I going to get my A, B, and C for this formula?
X.
What is A equal to?
0. X. 15. -1. Minus 15.
2. What is B?
1. -1.
-1. What is C?
15. -1.
-15. You're getting them from these numbers right here. That's your A, your B, your C.
Is
Then,
it in order?
Yep, always in order. Okay, the A is always with the x squared. This one's always the B. That one alone is always the C. So looking at this, with that formula, I'm going to do negative what?
185.
Okay, we can do it that way. I was just going to put it in parentheses with a negative 1. Okay, so it's positive 1 plus or minus the square root of what?
Negative 1 squared.
Which is
1.
1 minus 4 times
2.
times
Negative 15.
2 times 2.
Yes.
Okay, so let's do this in our heads here. What's 4 times 2?
8.
Okay, let's do it this way. What's 2 times negative 15?
Negative 30.
Negative 30 times negative 4.
120. Negative 20.
Positive 120.
Yes.
And then you add 1
121.
over.
4.
What's the square root of 121?
6. 11.
Okay, so this is really two answers, right? Because on one case you add and the other you subtract.
Yeah.
So if we take 1 plus 11
12.
and divide it by 4,
6.
1 minus 11,
Negative 10.
negative 10 divided by 4,
2.8. Negative 2.5.
thank you. Okay. Looking up here, if you put this negative 2.5 in for these x values, will we get a negative distance?
No. Yeah, it's about.
If you put negative 2.5 right here,
Yeah,
you're going to get a negative distance.
Yes.
Is that possible?
No.
No. Okay. So that is not an answer. 3 is your answer.
What was that X and
That's factoring. That's completely different style of solving. So we're going to just go with this method because teaching this would take a few days to make sure that you really understand it. Questions? Team points. All right.